I was a child when I was introduced to the idea of God, God the incorporeal being, God the bodiless one. And of course, at that age, I was not aware of any other studies or information about who God was or who God was not, what God did or what God did not do. But one thing that was appealing to me was this idea that God the incorporeal is a benevolent being, is one who is the remover of sorrow and the bestower of happiness. And not one who is checking up on you all the time and seeing all the mistakes you make. And so it became attractive to me to want to understand the nature, the personality of the Supreme Being, of the Incorporeal One, and to explore how to use this in my own day-to-day life. Now, one of the things which was important to me as I was going through my teenage years was how to live a life of response to the human condition. So this was in the UK, in London, back in the mid to late 80s. And at that time there was a lot of talk about the problems in the world, the possible nuclear conflict, famines in different parts of the world. And I used to think that how can I live a life of response to all of this? What can I do to help? How can I contribute? And one thing became clear was that the best way in which I could be useful is to learn to work on my own self in terms of overcoming the root causes of all problems, which is basically ego consciousness, and then to help in providing an education so other people can also do that. And so this link or relationship with the incorporeal became more and more important. There's a lot of rhetoric and good wisdom around in the world about how to be a good person, how to live a life of values. But what seemed to be missing, and there seemed to be a gap here between what was being said and what was being practically done. And through my own studies, it became clear that without power, without that inner strength, it's very difficult to live a life of values and to place these high and noble ideas into one's practical life. So when I would meditate and remember the Supreme Soul and cultivate that relationship in my day-to-day life, what I found happening was that the best which was within me would come up to the surface. Now, it's commonly known that the company that a person keeps will color that person. And so both positive and negative influences come upon you according to the people that you choose to hang around with. And then the thought came, the feeling came, that if I can really connect with the Supreme Soul, who is the fountain of all virtues, all goodness, all truth, then it means that the best which is within me will also come up to the surface. And that's what I want. As a human being, one wants to discover what is the best within oneself. And I want to see that, I want to experience that, but also I want to be able to offer that to the world. I want it to be my contribution to the world. And a thought which would come to me was that if a person goes through their life without discovering what they are capable of, then has that person really lived? And I think of the example of an eagle, which is a powerful bird with powerful wings. And if it's born and it stays in its nest and it grows in the nest and it continues to stay in the nest, and one day it also dies in the nest, you could say it's been a comfortable life, it's been a safe life, perhaps it's been an easy life. But it's a shame that this bird, which could fly across many landscapes, it could see so much, it just didn't use what it has to do that. And the thought came to me also was that I want the best within me to emerge, to experience it, to discover it, and then to express it. And so it's only when I, the soul, am really in connection, in relationship with the Supreme Soul, that the best within me arises. And so that then became a daily decision that I need to, and I want to take some time just to experience that personal connection between I, the soul, and the Supreme Soul. As it were, to be face to face with that Supreme Being. And to have that experience of that close, that intimate, that very personal and private sense of connectedness. And then further, as I continued my life, I started working and traveling and so on. It became clear to me that one of the most astounding experiences is not just to know God, not just to know the Supreme, not just to experience living in a relationship with the Supreme, but then further also to experience being a representative of the Supreme in one's personal life. And it's a great wonder of God that God is such a being of humility, of course, that God would allow anyone who wishes to connect with him, with her, and live a life in which you are actually expressing and demonstrating God's virtues. And as one begins to do that, then also there's the exhilaration of discovering the personality of God, the Incorporeal. There are two important principles which we often talk about in our study, which have been very important for me, and I know also for many other yogis. And I guess yogi life is partly about exploring, experimenting, discovering, and experiencing principles like these two. And one of those is this, that if I, the soul, if I take one step of courage, then the Incorporeal, the Supreme, will give me 1,000 steps of help. And I know for many, this has been the experience so many times in practical life, that one is faced with challenges, difficulties, or you may be asked to do something which you feel is beyond your reach. But rather than making an excuse, but having the courage to take a step forward, to do the right thing, to face one's fears, to face one's feeling of inadequacy or incompetence, and do it anyway, then a lot of help comes. And so I experienced how, God is also a great, let's say, administrator of justice. Keeps the balance of being very loving, but also very lawful. And in this regard, I would say God is, of course, a great parent, has tremendous parenting skills, because within the relationship with God, I learn to grow. If a parent were to give only love, then of course the child may manipulate or take advantage of that love. But where there is the balance of being loving and also being lawful, in other words, giving discipline, then the child grows up in a balanced way, grows up healthy. And this is the wonder of living in relationship with the incorporeal, with the Supreme, that every part of you becomes divine the closer you come in relationship to God. So, on the one hand, you learn to see your own weaknesses, and therefore you can work on them and overcome them. And on the other hand, your talents, your skills, your abilities, which may be lying latent within you, become activated and emerged. And so it's like a kind of all-round development of your personality as you come into this daily relationship and experience with God. Then the second important principle is the one that we phrase as Sache Dil Pe Sahab Razi, that the Lord or the Supreme is pleased with an honest heart. And this really gives us a tremendous insight into, what can we say, the personality or the psychology of God. That the thing that God loves the most and is attracted, if we can say, by the most, is cleanliness of the heart, a true heart, truth or purity in one's intention, in one's motive behind what one is doing. And that's a great, let's say, a great thing to understand, regardless of one's ability to do something. But more important than the ability is the motive behind which I am doing it. And so then that became another great lesson for me, that whenever I am maybe doing anything, especially in terms of some kind of spiritual service, question is, how clean is my motive as I do whatever I am doing? And for me, cleanliness of motive means to be beyond the feelings connected with the words I and mine. To be beyond ego, to be beyond arrogance, and to be beyond a sense of possession or selfishness. These two things I've understood to be spiritual dirt or spiritual pollution, feelings of ego and feelings of possessiveness. And when I clean these out of myself, when I work on really making my motive clean, then the feeling is as though, God's energy, God's presence, God's support comes, and whatever I'm doing seems much more easy, fun, and becomes successful. One very beautiful sentence I once heard shared by a senior yogi teacher was that your mind is like a garden, and if you keep your garden clean, then God will come and take a walk in your garden. And that was tremendous. It was very beautiful and poetic, but not just poetic, it's actually true. So if I can pay attention to keeping the mind clean, which means forgetting the useless things of the past, forgetting my own mistakes, forgetting the mistakes of others, learning lessons, taking the lessons with me, but not holding on to useless memories, then this qualifies or prepares the mind and becomes a place worthy enough for God to take a walk in the garden of my mind. And then furthermore, just a few important relationships. One can, of course, experience any kind of relationship with the incorporeal according to your own personality, according to what's in your own heart. So, for example, one of the main ones I would say is God or the Supreme as a father. And Father, of course, has many, many attributes, many characteristics: protector, provider, support, educator. But also I would add one which I relate to a lot, is that Father means one who gives me identity. Whatever is the identity of the Father is also the identity of the child. And so one phrase which I like very much is that one of the titles or attributes of God is He is Sukhdata. He's the bestower of happiness. And so then I remind myself, well then who am I? I am a child of Sukhdata. I am a child of the bestower of happiness. So in any situation, what should I do? If there's a situation where there is not happiness, or somebody else is, holding a grudge, or there seems to be heaviness, what should I do? As a child of the bestower of happiness, let me take the initiative to share happiness, to bring smiles, to create joy. Let me not wait for a situation to change or somebody's mood to change before I share happiness, but as a child of the bestower of happiness, as a child of Sukhdata, let me be the one to do that first. So being aware of being a child of God, in this case, just helps to change and to upgrade the awareness and to create the impact of taking on this title of being a child of Sukhdata. Furthermore, I would add that God as a teacher is another very important relationship for me. To study the knowledge which God relates, especially at this important time that we're passing through, to understand the context of why things are the way they are in the world, especially nowadays with the darkness that seems to have descended upon humanity. Why are things the way they are? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do good things happen to bad people? Is there such a thing as injustice? Why do people fight? Why are we passing through this pandemic, and yet still there is more and more conflicts happening in the world? So God as a teacher guides and creates context. And context for me was essential to know, firstly, why things are the way they are, and secondly, how can I make a best contribution to help things to change? And so I deeply appreciate the knowledge that we study, because it gives some meaning and purpose to daily life, rather than just being pulled along by life as a passenger, but how to make a meaningful contribution. And then let me just add one more, and this could be to experience God, to experience the incorporeal as a friend. And of course, friends are people you choose. You choose to hang around with them. If you think, for example, of how many friends you had in your circle when you were at school, it may have been, let's say, 10, 15, even 20 in your general circle. And when you're 20, 30 years older, then how many have you kept in touch with? It tends to be people you feel close to, tends to be people you find easy to communicate with. So friends are people we choose. And in this regard, my experience is, yes, the incorporeal, the supreme, really is the true friend of the soul. That when everyone else may have abandoned you, when everybody else may have moved away to take care of their own lives, but still standing there as the dust settles, as the smoke clears, still standing there is God the friend, the one who knows me better than I know myself, the one whom I can trust, the one who is honest with me, tells me not just what I like to hear, but what I need to hear. the one who is loyal and is with me through the good days and through the not so good days. On those days when I am standing at the top of the hill, but also the days when I may be walking through the valleys. And so these are some of the relationships that I found useful and important in my own journey, in my own relationship with God. And let me just finish with a little symbol I like to do with 3 fingers. It's like this, that at the beginning of the day, the first thing to do is represented with the thumb. The beginning of the day, first I need to connect with my own self. That is, I must remember who I am, that I'm a spiritual energy, I am a soul, I'm incorporeal, I am an actor in the play of life. So that's represented by the thumb. And then this finger here, this represents then the second thing to do every day. That is to remember the Supreme Soul, to remember my personal, my private connection with the Supreme, and spend some time in that silent communion, in that silent communication, that silent conversation with the Supreme, and experience the Supreme's blessings upon me. So having some personal meditation to experience that connection, that relationship. And then comes the third finger, and this then represents other people. So people who may be living in the house, or things you have to do for the day, or the messages to check on your mobile, or you have to look at what's happening in the news, or the weather, or the traffic, all of that. And so it's like, these 2 are really the foundation of the day. First, let me engage with myself. Then let me engage with the Supreme. Then let me engage with life. And so I believe if we do things in this order, then the day has a solid foundation. And when there is this solid foundation, then through the day, when there are challenges to my peace of mind, challenges to my happiness, my peace and happiness will still be intact. Thank you, and Om Shanti.